Hi, it's me, Annalisa Boyd. I'm an Orthodox Christian wife, mom to 8 kids, bread baker, candy maker, self-proclaimed doula, accidental midwife, and the author of the Ascetic Lives of Mothers, Hear Me, and Special Agents of Christ, all through Ancient Faith Publishing. So today, I'm going to talk about why I cover my head. This is my head covering for today. I really like it, actually. I think it turned out well. Makes me happy. But I have a couple different reasons why I wear a head covering, and I thought I would share those today. So, and I'm, again, in my lovely 12-passenger office. That is not moving. I'm parked in my driveway, but it was a nice, quiet place to go. Okay, so I started wearing a head covering while I was still a Protestant, and which was a very strange thing for me to do. I was the only person who wore a head covering at my church, and they already thought we were weird anyway because we had a larger than average family, and we kept our children with us in the service, and I covered my head, and we homeschooled. So we just had all these things that were just kind of funky, so I kind of went with it. Why not cover my head? So I was reading in the Bible, which is a good thing, but I was reading from 1 Corinthians 11, verses 2 through 16, but I'm only going to read a couple of the verses that really stood out to me on that faithful day. So verse 5 says, "But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is one and the same as if her head were shaved." Verse 6, "For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered." Verse 10, "For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels." And I thought that was really interesting. The symbol of authority. What does this all mean? And is it something that I should even be doing right now? Does it matter if I cover my head? And so I'm not judging anybody else. This is my story. But I decided to do some research. So I got my big old Strong's Concordance because it has a list of all pretty much every word that's in the Bible. And some words have multiple meanings and usages, and so it helps to look in the Strong's Concordance so you can see how a certain word, like the word covered in this verse, how it compares to where it's used other places in the Bible. So does it have the same meaning? And then I got my Vine's Expository Dictionary, that just sounds like I know a lot, to help me define what that word means. So the word covered, does it actually mean a literal cover, something that you're putting over something, or does it mean veil, or does it mean an additional cover? In this context, what did it mean? And from what I could deduce as a non-theologian was that it meant a cover, something to go on top of the hair, because it says later in the verse something about a woman's hair being given to her as a covering, but the word cover that they were referring to is a veil or a head covering. And so I first started wearing just a bandana. And in my personal opinion, I really felt like I looked like a homeless person because unless I get to have a shower in the morning, my hair is I'm kind of a big brown Q-tip, or, me and Diana Ross from the 70s, we're good buds. We're sisters in hair, except I'm not doing it on purpose and it's not the style. But I felt like God was saying that I needed to cover my head. And so I started covering my head. And some of the times I cover my head are when I'm in church, always. When I get a phone call or somebody comes to me and asks for my counsel, I will cover my head because of it talking about when a woman is praying or prophesying and as that symbol of authority, because I always wanted to remember if I was giving any counsel that I don't want it to be in my strength or out of my own authority, but I am humbling myself before Christ so that I will, even in my conversations, to encourage people, that I will be submitting myself to His will. And so that was important. So there have been times where I have not had a scarf near me, and I have put an oven mitt on my head, or a baby blanket, or a towel. I mean, there have been a number of things I've put on my head, and yes, it's kind of funny, but I do take it seriously. Now, when I wear my head covering to church, it is absolutely out of conviction. I believe that I am supposed to wear my head covered. When I became Orthodox, it really stood out to me that all the icons on the wall in church of women, they all had their heads covered except for Mary, but she didn't have anything covered, and I wasn't going to church like that. So, but I was really encouraged as we try to imitate the lives of the saints. No, I don't need to go out and dress in a full burqa or whatever it's called. But that idea of even they are portrayed as following through with this directive that's in the Bible. So I just think that's interesting. And at my church, I was only one of probably three. After we became Orthodox, I was one of only maybe three who covered her head. But I won't go into a church unless I can cover my head. And that is my conviction. Now, the convenience part is when I'm outside of church. Now, just covering your head does not mean that you're following God. And that is something that I think is very important to understand, because you can absolutely, like with everything, do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and there will be no blessing in it. So at one church, there were a group of women. It was very highly encouraged that women cover their heads, and it became almost a competition, because initially they wore their head covering in church, and then they'd leave church and take their head covering off and go about their business, go about their day. And then some women started saying, well, the Bible does say the Bible does say to pray without ceasing. And if we're supposed to wear our head coverings while we're praying, then I must wear mine all the time. And I'm a good Christian if I wear my head covering all the time. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose, and you're dealing with, yes, you're covering your head, but you are not doing it in a spirit of humility, and good old pride makes its way in, so that doesn't work so well. But another thing that I thought was interesting too, St. John Chrysostom said something about head coverings. Yay, he's had a lot to say about a lot of things. And this is in a sermon at the Feast of the Ascension, spoke both of angels and the veiling of women. And it says, the angels are present here. Open the eyes of faith and look upon this sight. For if the very air is filled with angels, how much more so the church? Hear the apostle teaching this when he bids the women to cover their heads with a veil because of the presence of angels. Now, I don't know exactly why, and I haven't done further research really into why for the sake of the angels, but I imagine that if it's in there, there's a good reason, and there is something significant, and somebody else might have more information and can maybe post that below if they've done some research or something like that. But these are the reasons that I cover my head. I do it because I feel convicted when I'm in church. Outside of church, it is truly out of convenience most of the time, because, like I said, unless I have an opportunity to take a shower, and with 8 kids, I don't always. And I feel sometimes like I need to go to confession and say, forgive me, it has been 4 days since my last shower. Truly, 4 days sometimes. But I still, covering my head during the day when it's not a church time or a prayer time, it allows me to feel like I've accomplished something. I look like I've put myself together, and it's something that's nice that I don't have to think about the whole rest of the day. And the reason I cover my head like this, as opposed to just putting the scarf around my neck and, on either side, is because in church, that is so distracting to myself, because I have a lot of kids. We usually have an extra baby. Like right now I have 9 kids, and they're constantly pulling it off, or when I press myself and bend down, it falls off, and so I'm a mess, and I'm like, ooh, it's wings, or I just get I get sidetracked. Ooh, something sparkly. That's me, like all the time. So this allows me to not have to think about it. So it's not a distraction. I am covering my head, but I am also able to focus more on the service. So those are my reasons. In the next video, I will be trying to show you a couple different ways on how to wrap my head and the resources I use to get the scarves that I use and the other tools. There are tools that are really helpful. So I will do that. And until then, let's keep working out our salvation one mommy moment at a time. Have a fantastic day. Bye.